Hello, everyone. Also from my side, my name is Alessandro De Carli, co-founder at Papers, which is a Web3 venture builder. And my goal for today is to explain a little bit to you what Checker is, share with you the intuitions that I got while working with the system, so that everybody understands it a little bit better, hopefully. My journey with Checker actually starts in a very traditional way at Credit Suisse. And when I started working with Credit Suisse, it was actually a very exciting time because a new device came on the market. It was the iPhone. And there was this burning need from the consumers, being employees or even customers that wanted to bring this device inside the bank and basically have control over their finances wherever they go. And this created, of course, a lot of excitement everywhere, but also some challenges. And the challenges were for mostly two parties. On one hand, the IT department at the bank, because all of a sudden they had to secure a device that was way more portable than any other device that they had before, and also kind of derived from that the hardware manufacturer, the operating system producers, that all of a sudden had to do something that is very difficult in security, namely cover the attack vector of physical access onto a device. But they did pretty well. It's actually quite remarkable. Nowadays, these devices come with very strong hardware security modules and are being used for very large transactions every day. And this taught me two things. One, that consumers are basically the driving force for innovation, and that a need actually is capable of pushing very large financial institutions and also other players into adopting technology that they actually did not want, but they have to adopt. What it also did, it introduced me to my colleague, Mike Godenzi, which is our CTO, and another colleague, Matteo, that really nagged me on and on about getting more into crypto. And so we did, and we found out that actually there was quite a big need for providing to the crypto community a tool to be able to basically take over this responsibility of self-custody. And this couldn't be just a service, because otherwise we would end up into the same setup like a bank where someone else is holding your coins. And now more than ever, this is a very relevant thing. So what we did here is we took a concept that is widely known and used in high security setups, air gapping, and basically created something that is consumer friendly and everybody can just set up. And you have the concept is basically to have a physical separation from the outer world from your key material. Now that we solved the self-custody bit, we said, okay, that's all exciting, but what do we do now with these assets? And that brought us to US, a DeFi platform, where people actually, again, in a full self-custody mode, can go on the platform and basically provide their liquidity for someone else to use and earn something on that. And that's where our touch point comes from for Checker, because we then got in touch with the technology, and there will also be an announcement for later on. But before we get into that, the question that probably you're asking yourself if you're not into the DeFi space is, do these systems actually work? Because if you take a look at the algo coin that was actually one of the most successful, if not the most successful algo coin, namely the UST from Terra, basically went into a death spiral and within a matter of hours really was entirely wiped away. And they also were an algorithmic coin, and the problem basically was that they had factor into their system, into their algorithms, also the well, a component of growth, and this component of growth is something that people tend to say, okay, then it's a Ponzi scheme, right? A system that relies on growth to be functioning is by definition a Ponzi scheme. However, Ponzi schemes work, like we see with we see with various. Exactly, until the music stops, it works. But another thing that is very relevant here is that everybody knows where the weaknesses lie, and that's what actually happened here. Someone started to shake this card house, and yes, and so it collapsed. Now, why am I telling you this? So I think DeFi is not dead, of course, and I think then more than ever we are in need for a platform and a system that is economically sound and can deliver on this promise. And that's where also Checker comes into play. So Checker originally was an idea from Arthur Brightman on how to solve this kind of problems and how to ultimately allow also synthetic assets of any sorts to be brought on chain. It has been supported by Nomadic Labs that also have organized this event. Thank you so much. And also Tweak and TZ Connect Berlin that I also see in the crowd. Thank you so much also to you. And it's a generic piece of software, an engine that allows to create robocoins. And what robocoins are, it's a token that in its value, or its value is basically adapted to whatever you want it to follow. So you define a certain target, and then that's what it will follow. And by the way, everything is open source. I already said that, and you can find it on GitHub. There is also a lot of documentation there. In a nutshell, it's a platform where you bring together two parties. On one hand, you have people that want to mint and short the kit, and the robocoin is called KIT in the context of Checker. And on the other hand, you have the holder that wants to get the exposure of this kit. Now, if these parties are in balance, that's all cool, and you don't need to care too much about it, but often it is the case that they're not in balance, and this is where actually Checker begins to shine, because it has something called drift. And what the drift does is it finds this balance for you. Basically, it automatically corrects this balance. This sounds all very esoteric and abstract, but can be best shown with the example of something that is already live and on-chain, on the Tezos chain, CTES. And CTES is using large portions of the Checker engine. And what we see on the left, when it first launched, the price was actually below the target. This means it was oversold. And that's where the drift then basically kicked in and overcorrected a little bit. I mean, you see there. And then again, it drifted on the other side, and now it's a little bit in balance. So it's starting to really get on this target. And it's also a little bit like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because everybody knows that if the drift is not corrected, eventually you will be able to convert your kit to whatever collateral is there. So the minter will get liquidated. This is an overview of the Checker system. and how everything kind of works together. It has a CFMM integrated in the engine. It has the KIT token, and outside of the engine, you have the collateral token and the oracle. This can be basically just be plugged in. You could also plug in the CFMM as long as it honors the observations that it needs to do. And here in more detail, the burrow is basically where you allow to have control over a pool of assets but still segregate them. And this is a very specific topic to actual Tezos, because as you know, you can select a baker, and this selection is actually quite important because it's how you also control the new protocol upgrades and so on and so forth. And if you would just pool together tests and have a very successful product, then in the end you would have one central party that has control over over the protocol. That's why you create this kind of bags of tests called burrows, and yet you give the control to another smart contract, the checker smart contract. So you can select your individual baker, but still have a way to control those assets. And on the CFMM side, at the moment, it's a constant product market maker that comes pre-built with the checker source codes, but it also can be another market maker, like Uniswap v3 market maker style is also possible. And it receives the burrow fees or parts of the burrow fees as an incentive. And what is really cool about the checker system and the checker engine is that you don't need to choose between getting the interest rate that the minter is paying or providing liquidity, because the interest rate is actually accrued inside the token itself. So you can still earn that interest rate while providing liquidity. This introduces a couple of new challenges that we'll get into later on. But yes, and also very important is this is where we observe the price. So for the drift, we observe on the constant product market maker the price. And also for the liquidations, that actually I think is the next one. It has a quite sophisticated liquidation mechanism that leverages auctions. And it's quite cool because you don't really need an Oracle feed to start and have these liquidations. You just take a look at the CFMM price and say, okay, this is the highest I'm willing to pay. And then you start going down with the price until someone grabs the collateral at that price. It's really elegant because it's also highly gas efficient. You need only one transaction to basically go and get, participate in the auction and get the price without people constantly bidding and clogging up the network. And it's protected against Oracle failures. Let me quickly check on the time here. Yes. Good. What brings everything together is the checker engine. And the cool thing is everybody knows what the checker engine will do, right? So if the price is below the peg, the drift will catch up and people will get liquidated at some point. So you get your convertibility from that. And from there on, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Since people know that this point will come, there's a lot of arbitrage opportunities that correct the price again onto target. And that's also the elegance of the system. Here again, all the components and how they all come together. Now, what can we do with it? Actually, a lot. the thing that I have not mentioned yet is that the drift can be positive or negative. So even for assets that have a lot of requests on the holder side, you can incentivize the minter by having a negative interest rate on it, or let's say a fee for it. And one of the examples that is not possible with a system like MakerDAO, but would be possible with a system like Checker, is providing actually a KIT token that gives you a hedge against the problem of impermanent loss. And of course, everybody would want this token. That's why someone needs to pay then a premium for it. And with the Checker engine, the engine itself will, through this mechanism that I explained, find how big the premium is, and then basically balance the demand and the supply on that. So that's actually quite a cool use case. But you're very free on basically selecting whichever target you want. You could even select the number of clicks on a website that everybody knows is going to go up, but maybe it's going up faster or less fast. So yes, you're really free to be very creative. We will get, however, to the some of the things that you need to keep in mind while being creating. Another use case, and this is the first time that we're actually announcing this, is CCHF that UVS is launching on the Tezos Ghostnet, or is already on the Ghostnet today. Everybody can use the Checker engine and play around with it, feel how it is, and provide us then with feedback. And I think it's a matter of weeks before we then also bring it on mainnet itself. And the cool thing here is that the holder of the CCHF is going to get the interest rate even if they choose to provide it as a liquidity on-chain. Cool. And this already brings me to the things to keep in mind while using Checker, because there's a couple of things there. The token price reflects the accumulated interest rate as well as whichever target you're trying to following. This means that if we say now on the example of CCHF that our target is to have one CCHF or the exposure of one CHF in CCHF, at some point it will not be one-to-one because at some point you will receive more CHF for one CCHF since the interest is accruing inside the token. And this sounds maybe quite clear for people that now have seen the presentation, but maybe for users it's a little bit weird if they don't see a one-to-one thing. I mean, they will be happy because usually it's going in the right direction and not in the other direction. But on the UX side, you will need something to show them this is interest and this is the actual token value on target. The other thing is as well, minters have to constantly observe the market and maybe act on the market, especially if it is a low liquidity market, because it's not like another engine where you can take a look at the price and say, okay, when the price hits $2, I will get liquidated. So I set up a Telegram bot or whatever, and then whenever it drops near that threshold, I do something. Because of the drift, you can basically get liquidated before or even after the price at which you started. So that's another thing that the users need to be made aware of, and also the minters themselves. I mean, if you want to participate in a more or less professional way, you will need to also keep track of that. On the other hand, however, you have great arbitrage opportunities. So in the end, this problem shouldn't be so big if there is enough liquidity. And it's a very powerful engine to synthesize any target. However, always keep in mind that if you have something that only has holders and very little minters, there will be tiers eventually, because one party, I mean, it will find its balance. So whenever you think of use cases, you should think of use cases that have both parties more or less available to deploy their liquidity on this. Cool. And that's it, really. I hope that was interesting enough, and I'll open up for questions. And yes, we're hiring as well at Papers in case you're looking for a job. Thank you. Yes, please.
So I don't want to get out of the topic. I heard like about all the development you've been talking about, and I wonder if we can ask also some general question about the whole blockchain company. My first question is like, I know like the industry is very competitive, and I wonder if on the long term, Tezos is planning to like always upgrade and like make new improvement to be able to keep his I'll say spot into the market, because as we can see, there is already like 20,000 crypto into the industry. It's very difficult to make an investment. I haven't had the chance to even read the Tezos white paper, because there is just too many. So I just wonder, how do you guys see yourself outstand the whole crypto industry?
Yes. So the way I see it, the cool thing about Tezos is that actually it is able to basically look around in the industry and adopt new technologies, such as the new layer 2 technologies that have been around, and do so on the native layer and not in a kind of hacky way through smart contracts. And by knowing that, as a developer, I know that I can be very, very flexible, and basically it will eventually accommodate my needs, because if I need something special, like a special curve on-chain, or I can just express this need, and if enough people agree with me that this is important, it will eventually get in one of the next protocol upgrades. So on the developer side, it's quite interesting. The other thing is also why we built now UVIS on Tezos is you have kind of an imbalance. So a lot of the tools were not available for the developers. And now it's really the case that you have amazing tools in the whole ecosystem that allow you to create huge, nice applications that can become very successful overnight. And for me, it's very similar to when the iPhone was around, and then there was Android, and everybody was just focusing on iOS. But if you were to deploy an application on Android, you knew that overnight you had thousands of downloads and traction, and it's very similar to Tezos, right? Yes, I agree that at the moment it is small or smaller, but I see a huge traction as well in the community itself. And I don't know, I don't believe that it will be a winner-takes-all market. I think you will choose the right technology for your project, and it will be multi-chain, but that's just my personal belief.
Oh, thank you for presentation. I'm wondering, do you have? Are you going to plan to have some tooling for minters that you mentioned, or from what I understand, you need to somehow hack around Like if you want to mint, try to write your own liquidator, I don't know, indexer checker, right? To see if you need to. Are you going to plan to provide some tooling for it from inside the checker, or is it not priority for you?
I'm having trouble hearing you acoustically. Can you repeat the question, maybe? Yes.
The question is like, are you going to provide some tooling for minters?
Yes.
To liquidate it? That is what you mentioned. Like, is it
yes.
the roadmap and?
Right. So for more sophisticated minters, of course, there will be tools, but I also think that especially the whole auctioning mechanism will be mostly not a UI where you start interacting but bots, and we will definitely also provide the scripts as a reference implementation so that people can then optimize it for themselves and take a look at the mempool and maybe be quicker than others and stuff like that, I think. And the thing is, the really cool thing is, in DeFi in general, you tell people that something is possible, there is a risk-free arbitrage, and some people will just spend weeks to develop then the tools. So you don't need, you just need to define a protocol that is sound enough, and then people will take over the rest and get excited also about the project because they can earn money in a risk-free way. So, yeah.
If you can say where it's in the roadmap, like next quarter, end of the year.
Well, right. So for the liquidation bots, there is actually already something in there, and for the minting one, we haven't identified that need yet, but I can see that that's probably coming, and I think for the next quarter is certainly something that we could take a look at. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Is there a vulnerability for a checker on the size of the CFMM liquidity pool? Like if it's too small, is there a possibility that an actor might manipulate the system?
So, is there a possibility to manipulate the Bitcoin price in general on centralized exchanges? Yes, there is. Right. If I have unlimited amounts of money, I can move the price wherever I want. Is there a way to do so with the CFMM? Yes, there is. However, what Checker does very, very well is it absorbs spikes. So whenever the price changes with kind of these flash loan scenarios, it will just ignore the huge spike and dampen it by quite a lot. So there are mechanisms to work against this. But of course, if I have unlimited money supply, I can even just push the price to wherever I want, and eventually a checker will pick up that price even without these spikes. So yeah, there are mechanisms, but there is still the possibility, like you said.
All right, and with that, let's give a big round of applause to Alessandro for presenting Checker.
Thank you.